So good evening, everyone. Now the recording is in progress and we're happy that we're all here. And let me just quickly give you an overview on the agenda tonight. As you can see here on the next slide, we will start with talking about benefits of storytelling in the classroom. But of course, we'll introduce ourselves briefly as well. And we always try to make a link when we talk on the benefits of storytelling to Curriculum 21, of course. We'll then focus on concrete and specific activities with stories you can use in the classroom. And also we'll have a look on book recommendations you can immediately use in your own practice. We'll then focus on pocket books and digital storytelling, on our own individual or personal approach on using pocket books to digitalize a storytelling product. And then, as Jasmin already mentioned before, we have time for your individual questions. And we'll also give you a list of references here. But let me introduce ourselves a little bit or briefly, so you know a bit more about Jasmin and me, and I'll hand over to my colleague, Jasmin.
Thank you, Nadine. So I'm Jasmin Melchior, as Jasmin already said. So I've been teaching English for over 23 years now as a second language, and I am also a lecturer here at the PH Schwyz. So I have been teaching also with Nadine a storytelling workshop. And I think one of the reasons that we started out with this workshop, or that we love doing this workshop, is that both of us have a very deep love of books and literature. When I was a little girl, I actually learned to read at the age of 4 because I was so impatient waiting for my father to read more pages of storybooks. And I think that storybooks are a wonderful way to try to promote inclusion, to try to teach children lessons, and of course, to help them with their language development. So we're really looking forward to this seminar with all of you.
And yeah, let me introduce myself as well a little bit. So as Jasmin already mentioned before, I used to work as a primary school teacher for more than 15 years. I started teaching English in 2006 when the English as a subject was introduced in primary school. So I really had the experience to start a new subject, which was really exciting for me. And since I'm a mom myself, I also realized that storytelling is really something you can use as an authentic form to teach your kids something. You know, as Jasmin mentioned before, I'm obsessed with books, but I'm also obsessed with the English language. So with my degree in English didactics, I was able to, you know, combine the passion for teaching as well as the passion for the English language. And books are also, as I mentioned before, another passion for me. So it's always great fun to have this workshop together with Jasmin and to try to, you know, transfer or convey the passion and obsession of books to our students here at our university. So we mentioned before that we want to dive into the topic of storytelling by presenting you the benefits of storytelling in the classroom and why it's good to use it. We know that you're all already teachers, that you're practitioners, you are experts in your field, but we still think it's important to emphasize some of the aspects we've got here on the slide. So it's an authentic form of communication. And with authentic materials, we mean, you know, real life materials English-speaking kids would use or English-speaking teachers would use in the classroom. Could be storybooks, could be picture books, could also be like brochures where there's stories inside, leaflets, and so on. And Curriculum 21 emphasizes the use of authentic materials. And as soon as we're using authentic materials, it's kind of also conveying the idea of the authentic form of communication. And as I mentioned before, we both love reading, and I think, you know, you can actually cover any topic you like, even emotional topics like anxiety, bullying in the classroom. This is also something authentic because it happens in your own classrooms. And there are some stories that really talk and discuss various topics, even the delicate ones. And in addition, while listening to stories, children can also easily pick up new words or expressions without even realizing they're learning. And even with my own kids, I realized that rhymes and repetitive patterns really help children memorize stories better. And you also have the imagination and creativity mentioned here. You all know that stories encourage children to use their own imagination. And it also makes the process of learning language far more engaging, I found, and therefore also more enjoyable. And especially with my older daughter, I realized that he picked up some or certain language patterns without even realizing, because of the repetition that was used in a book. And I told her the story of the Gruffalo, for example. We will refer back to this book later on. And even by the age of 2.5, she could easily remember all the lines because there was so much repetition inside, and the story is kind of taken out of children's lives. And after I had told her the story, she started doing role plays with her younger sister, trying to imitate an animal that was mentioned in the story and so on. So they kind of retold the story without me even telling them to do so. So you see, these two aspects are really important, but of course there are other ones that Jasmin will focus on.
So we obviously, where you can see that the next on the list is that we want language to be in context and to be meaningful. And Lehrplan 21 very clearly tells us that we shouldn't be using word lists. We shouldn't be teaching language out of context. Children need to understand what the context of the language is in order for them to understand and in order for it to be meaningful. And there's no better way to do that than with stories. They hear the language that you want to convey to them, but they hear the language, the vocab and the grammar in the context of a story. And that story it almost encourages them to learn without consciously learning. It's so enjoyable for children to hear stories. So it's definitely a lot more contextual. And we'll help you, we'll show you a few books where we tie it into certain themes in Young World, for example, which makes the language, which puts it into context. The critical thinking skills, this is defined as the ability to analyze facts, to generate and organize ideas, to defend opinions, to make comparisons, draw inferences, evaluate arguments. There's a whole lot of things that we can encourage critical thinking skills in with children. It sounds a little bit odd if you're thinking about using storybooks and encouraging critical thinking, but I will show you some ideas for how we mean to do that in the next slide. And then the last thing is cultural awareness. Lehrplan 21 wants us to encourage cultural awareness. So it's important for the children, the learners, to understand the differences between cultures, to understand the similarities, to respect these differences. So we're going to, if we look at the next slide, I'll give you some ideas for the critical thinking skills. So here we have the three little pigs. If you give tasks to the learners, here's an example that we've taken from Young World. It's an authentic story. It's an extremely popular story for a lot of English-speaking children. It's obviously not authentic in terms of it's not the original book and the original format. It's been changed very slightly, but it is authentic in terms of the fact that it's a genuine story that I grew up reading and hearing all my life. And in this book, what you could do is ask them to predict what happens next. So, for example, in this particular story, you have the three little pigs who leave home. They want to build their own homes. Their mother warns them about the big bad wolf. One of them gets straw to build a house. One of them gets sticks to build their house, and one of them gets bricks. And then the big bad wolf comes along, and he knocks at the door of the straw house and says, "Let me in, let me in." And then at this point, you can say the wolf starts to huff, and he starts to puff. What do you think happens next? And leave it to the children to think about what is going to happen next. That prediction or that ability to predict is trying to encourage their critical thinking skills. And then with the next one, the house falls down. Next comes the house of sticks. Again, it's a repetition of what's happened with the house of straw. So the children will find it all the easier to then predict that, oh, the house is going to fall in. So here comes the predictions. Then at the end of the book, the wolf comes to the brick house, he knocks at the door, and you can ask the children again, what do you think happens? And they'll probably realize that this house is not going to fall down. But you can also encourage them. Once you've read them the end of the story, the wolf climbs up onto the roof, comes down the chimney because he can't get the house to blow down. He gets burnt by the fire and runs away. At the end, you can invite the children to think of an alternative ending. Can you think of a different way that things might pan out? Instead of the wolf coming down the chimney and getting burned, what other ways, what other things could happen? And so we've written here that maybe the pigs invite the wolf in to have snoonie or tea or elevenses, and they become friends. And children can get together in groups and think of an alternative ending. So that encourages the critical thinking. Then we have cultural awareness, stereotypes versus reality. Lehrplan 21 asks us not to encourage stereotypes, to help the children to understand that not all the things that they know about a particular culture are true. So we can look at stereotypes versus reality, and I've put Heidi here for a particular reason, because Heidi is seen by the world as a very typically Swiss book and a very typical Swiss life. But the children all will understand if you point out that, well, not all of us run around barefoot in the mountains. Not all of us play with goats and eat just cheese on toast and dried apples. There is a lot more to Switzerland than this stereotype that the outside world has. So understanding Swiss culture, understanding how important it is that the stereotype is not just what we have, and looking at similarities between Swiss culture and other cultures. So the Swiss and the British, for example, for both cultures, punctuality is really important. We both like to be on time. So children, I think, have a tendency to mock what is different. They don't like differences and they tend to pick on them. So we as teachers, using books, can encourage children to understand that differences are a good thing and should be respected. Differences in accents, differences in lifestyles, differences in food. And books are a perfect way to show this. I've actually put in Tiki Tiki Tembo. That's actually, it was a really popular story about a Chinese family and a Chinese boy called Tiki Tiki Tembo. And it was a funny little story in the 70s and the 80s, but it was written by an American author who had absolutely no knowledge of Chinese culture. So it's important to understand that promoting incorrect stereotypes can be a very bad thing. So instead, if you want to promote a culture without being stereotypical, a book that I would really highly recommend is The Name Jar, which we've put a picture of up here. And The Name Jar is about a young Korean girl who leaves Korea, leaves her family, and goes to live in the USA. And when she goes to school, on her first day at school, the children laugh at her name. And they pretend that they can't pronounce it. And they say it's a very difficult name, and they start to make fun of her. So she decides that in order to belong in the USA, she has to have an American name. And she asks the children in her class to help her and to put different names, suggestions into this jar. And in the end, the story goes that she remembers her grandmother that she left behind in Korea, and she remembers what her name means. And she realizes that being herself is the most important thing, that not changing herself and embracing who she is the most important thing. But cultural books don't always have to have a deep moral lesson. So we put Paddington. I'm sure all of you have heard of Paddington. It's here because it's a very well-loved book, but it also has a lot of British stereotypes. So you've got the black cabs, the red buses, the double-decker buses, Buckingham Palace, the Queen. And on the other side, remember that English is not just spoken in England. It's not just spoken in the USA. It's also spoken in Australia, in South Africa. And this book, So Much, is a great representation. It's an English book, but it's about Afro-Caribbean families. And it's a very, very lovely book. And it's a good way of encouraging children to understand that this Afro-Caribbean cadences and types, this way of speaking and the different slangs that they use is also valid. Right, so choosing the right story. One of the most important pre-tasks for you in the storytelling process is you need to love the story. You have to be invested in the story that you choose. Don't choose something that you think is recommended just because it's somebody else's idea of a great story. Doesn't mean it's your idea of a great story. So I told you about our workshop that we do with the bachelor students here, and we've noticed that the students who do best on this are the students who really love the book that they've chosen. They get invested in the story, they believe in the story, and they are the ones who do well. And we've given you an example of the Gruffalo. Most of you, I guess, will have heard of it. The verses always start with the same line. A mouse takes a walk through the deep dark wood. It has these Enimgay themes about the forest and animals. And Head to Toe is a very simple book. It shows animals doing these different physical movements, and the learners can repeat the music. It involves TPR so that the students can do the movements. So, for example, kicking their feet or turning their heads. And it's a very, very simple book, but a wonderful book for beginners. Okay.
I think there were like 2 questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to answer them now.
So what were the questions? Okay. So hang on a second. We'll have to have a look.
Or if you want, you can also ask the question in German or English out loud if you like, or otherwise we'll quickly check the chat function.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, it is available afterwards. It's recorded, so this was an easy question. Yes, we will send you a handout with our book recommendations. This is actually something we wanted to mention afterwards, but we'll send you a handout with all the books we think are important to know, and we'll also try to put a list together where you can immediately link any of the books we recommend to a unit from Young World. So we tied it in with the Young World unit, Young World 1, 2, 3, and 4.
But what we'll probably do is wait and do some questions in a little bit. So any questions that you have, you're very welcome to ask either in the chat or you can say it out loud afterwards. Yeah. Okay. All right. So hang on a second. We'll just close the chat here.
And I've mentioned the Gruffalo before, and it's a really lovely book. I mean, kids absolutely love it. And we realized, as Jasmin mentioned before, if the students, the PH students, like the story they choose here, it's usually the better presentation. And we've just realized that every single year we had 2 or 3 people choosing the Gruffalo to do their final storytelling assignment.
How many of you know the Gruffalo? Anyone? Okay.
Yeah, many people do.
Okay.
So, and it works really well. I mean, I still remember all the lines by heart, to be honest, as well, so, because of my daughters.
Okay. Can you still see us on the camera?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. Great. Okay. So we'll move on to the next slide. Okay. What's going on here?
Okay.
Okay. So we talked about the Gruffalo. And one of the themes of the Gruffalo is that we can tie in with the book is the theme from Young World 2, which is exploring nature. Right, so it's a very well-known, very well-loved book, and the writing is very simple and very rhythmic. It takes place in a forest, so you can do this Young World theme beforehand, and you'll find plenty of ideas to work with this. If you can't think of any for yourself, there is actually a website called gruffalo.com where you can find a lot of ideas that tie into the book. So before you start the book, as a pre-task to activate their pre-knowledge that they would have from having done Unit 4, you can ask some really simple questions. So for example, you might ask the students what they know about mice. We actually saw a very good idea from one of our students. They put various adjectives on the ground, and they asked the students to look at the adjectives and talk to each other and pick out adjectives that they think could be used to describe a mouse. So you could, for example, the word dangerous. Does the word dangerous apply to a mouse? Clearly not. Big or small, quiet, noisy, so that the children can then activate their pre-knowledge about a mouse and they're prepared. And you can also pre-teach some important words that repeat throughout the word, like flee, for example, meaning to run away. And then if I read out a page for you, you'll get an idea of the book. So I've just taken, we've come to the beginning of the book, but not right at the start. On went the mouse through the deep dark wood. An owl saw the mouse, and the mouse looked good. Woohoo! Where are you going to, mouse? Come and have tea in my treetop house. It's frightfully nice of you, Owl, but no, I'm going to have tea with a Gruffalo. A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo? A Gruffalo? Why, didn't you know? He has knobbly knees and turned out toes and a poisonous wart at the end of his nose. Ooh, where are you meeting him? Here, by the stream. And his favorite food is owl ice cream. Owl ice cream, to-wit, to-woo, goodbye, little mouse. And away Owl flew. Silly old owl. Doesn't he know? There's no such thing as a Gruffalo. So while you're reading out this book as a while activity, you could actually group the learners together to make noises for each of the character. So for the owl, the children could say tweet to woo. For the snake, the children could make hissing sounds. The fox, you might ask what noises fox make. Interestingly, it's something between barking like a dog and a scream. I'm not going to do it for you. And you could also have a total physical response when you're reading the book. So that when you say away owl fled, or away owl flew, or away snake slid, that the children could run from their chairs to another part of the room, and you get them involved and physically active. Then as a post activity, you get lots of activities, as I said, on gruffalo.com, or you could get them to draw the Gruffalo, to color in a picture of the Gruffalo, but more interesting might be for them to draw their own monster and write some simple sentences. So my monster has one eye, or my monster has 10 legs, whatever they want. But if you want to introduce differentiation, so looking at the different levels or the different skills of the children, maybe for children writing sentences like my monster has one eye is a little bit too much. So you could just get them to label, they could draw their monster and then label the monster with little arrows saying one eye rather than full sentences. So that way you can differentiate between the different levels of children.
And let me present to you the book I chose. I chose The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I think all of you know it. Even you've came across it when you were in school yourself, or you used it with your very young learners maybe. I think you can easily use it with very young kids. I mean, kindergarten children, but you could also use it with third or fourth graders. So my daughter, for example, is in third grade, and they focused on the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. So you could talk about the transformation in NMG, and you could immediately link it to the story here. So that's why I think you could also use it with all the kids. I mean, fourth graders, yeah, might be the age you can still use it. Of course, I wouldn't use it with fifth or sixth graders. I used to teach fifth and sixth graders. I think they would start laughing here, but with younger kids, it's a great book. I mean, as I said, my daughter is in third grade, and as you all know, in Young World 1, you focus on the colors, the numbers, days of the week, and you can make a link to the story here easily. As you can see here, I added an activity taken out of one of the Young World books, Young World 1, the rainbow, where we have all the colors. And of course, every time you read a page here in the Very Hungry Caterpillar, you mention day of the week and the number of different fruit the caterpillar is eating. And you also have this repetitive pattern here, and sometimes also the rhyming. And I also want to emphasize on the different activities. And as you might have realized before, we always said like pre-activity, so preparing the students for the story, then the while activities, engaging them actively while you tell them or read them the story, and then afterwards a post-activity as a consolidation task. Okay, so as a pre-activity, for example, I would see what foods the children actually like. I mean, you could even show them the pictures of the foods here. As you can see, the apples, the pears, the plums, the strawberries. Of course, you can only see fruit here. On a later page, I will read to you afterwards. You can also see like cupcakes, a slice of chocolate cake, and so on. And I would ask them if they like it, or dislike it. Ugh. And even if their level of English is not that high yet, they would understand if I do this and use a facial expression. Yay, I like it. No, I don't like it. And here, I mean, you could even do this with very young learners, and that they could use thumb up or thumb down, of course. And I think all of you have done this before with other tasks or other subjects. As a while activity, I would encourage children to repeat the numbers, of course, with me, and also repeat the days of the week. And maybe I would have activated their pre-knowledge before. So go through the numbers with them again. And then while I tell the story, they can also join in. If they wanted, they could do like body language as well. So you could use total physical response again. But if you have very shy kids, they don't have to join in. You don't oblige them to do so, but they're allowed to. So we're respecting the silent phase here a little bit as well. And as a post activity, I could imagine doing or letting them do a drawing. I will show you my idea afterwards. For example, and focusing on what a caterpillar is eating a whole week. And I will show you that you can add differentiation there as well and how you could do this. But all of you are practitioners. I think all of you have very good ideas themselves as well. But here you can see there's also a page, the page I've mentioned before, when I just said on one page you will also find like yummy things like chocolate cake. Children might like better than just fruit. I say it that way. And I'd like to read out this page to you as well. On Saturday, he ate through one piece of chocolate cake, one ice cream cone, one pickle, one slice of Swiss cheese for the Lord, one slice of salami, one lollipop, yummy, one piece of cherry pie, one sausage, one cupcake, oh, I love it, and one slice of watermelon. So I really like this book. I mean, I think it's very important to exaggerate a little bit here, because the munching sound is not always easy to imitate, of course, but I think most kids would love an ice cream. That's why I would add like something like yummy or delicious or tasty, and also yeah, emphasize that most of them would like it. And here I already mentioned the post activity I would do with my students. And I think you could really say my caterpillar eats. And here the very strong and very advanced kids who have very good English level already, they could write down what a caterpillar or their individual caterpillar eats in a whole week. And they could draw it as well. But the weaker students, maybe they would only be able to draw it, and that would be fantastic as well. So the natural differentiation is possible here too. So they can use what they already know. And then they can always add words to the page again. It's like the My Words page in the Young World activity book, where they can always add words as they go along a unit. So I think here we have the same philosophy. Okay, so we mentioned many books we would use in a classroom, or we've already used with our own kids, with kids in primary classrooms, with our students here at university level. But at this point, we would actually welcome you to share some of your book recommendations in the chat. So maybe you've already used authentic materials, pocket books, storybooks, picture books with your young learners during your English lessons. And we actually want to have like a swap shop. So you type in the name of the book. You can put it in English or in German, any language is fine, of the two of them. And maybe you can also add what worked well with the book, and was there like rhyming used, was cultural awareness inside, maybe you adapted the language to your learners' needs. Yeah, you see all the questions here. So we just want to have a whole collection of good book recommendations.
Just seen Room on the Broom for Halloween, and that's Julia Donaldson is the one who wrote the Gruffalo, and all of her books have such great rhythm to them, and are so funny in such an understated way. They're perfect for children, and the language is fairly simple and easy to understand. I also read them to both my daughters from a very, very early age, and I would highly recommend them for learners.
And Winnie the Witch, by the way, is already on our list of book recommendations. So we'll refer to Winnie the Witch afterwards as well, because I also found it great to use it with younger kids for colors.
Yep, Ramo Lang has written super great for colors and for the house, and it's exactly the same idea that we've had as well.
Yeah, Oliver Jeffers is great. Yeah, I think we had one of his books, or we have mentioned one of his books on our list as well. I like his books too.
Duck, I'm not familiar with, though. I shall have to look that up. Okay.
I think you've got There We Are. This Is Us, There We Are, something like that by him. So
Peppa Pig.
Yeah. My kids
Room on
love
the Broom
Peppa
be
Pig
okay
too.
for sixth graders? I would say yes.
Yes, if you make it spooky and a bit scary, then it would be fine.
Room on the Broom is actually, I think, it's quite a funny one. And I think that actually it works very well with young learners, but it also works with higher level learners, because there is always this element of comic fun in them. And I don't think that she in any way grades to a particular level. So I think it actually works with a variety of ages.
I think so too. And we also have a book on our list as well. It's called Funny Bones. It's about two skeletons who want to frighten somebody, but they don't meet anyone, so they start frightening each other. And it's actually a very, very funny story. I used it with sixth graders, and as long as you make it, I mean, you yourself as teachers, you know how to make it appropriate for your learners' level, and also to present it as a, kind of grown-up story for the very cool sixth graders. So I think that would work too.
Monkey Puzzle, yep. That's a great one as well. We just had that used in our workshop as well by one of the students.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Miss Nelson is missing.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, me neither. I first thought was there Miss Nelson in our group here? So, but yeah, the Froggy gets
series. Yes.
Yeah,
we've got that in our recommendations. There's they're great for lots of different themes, clothing, lots of fun vocab that they concentrate on. Okay,
exactly. So we see exactly Dr. Seuss is are great books as well.
The Matchbox Girl, yeah. We will talk about this because I actually think that it is really important for us to use our stories to teach lessons as well, because we're in such a unique position as teachers that we have the ability to make them aware of a lot more than just their own classroom and their own schoolyard. So I think that that's a really lovely idea. The only problem with a lot of some of the books, we have to be very, very careful when we vet them. We have to make sure that there is no situation in which you can't avoid it all the time, but there are some books that can be slightly problematic, even though they would be wonderful to read to students because of their particular circumstances. We don't eat our classmates.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
That's interesting. I think we have to get to.
I think we've got some lovely ideas on the chat. Malala's Magic Pen. Yes. Yeah. So we actually had this in our last workshop because we bring in our own books from home. And I had that, and I was quite interested to see that one of the students chose it. And it is one of those books where you really have to give background knowledge and some kind of pre-knowledge and pre-teaching before you start the book, because it is such an interesting and complex topic about Malala's experience of not being allowed to go to school and what happened to her. Do you think that a graded reader of Robin Hood is good?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say so.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you can choose the level anyway. It depends on the graded reader, or what level you're choosing. We're going on a bear hunt, by the way. There's a video, you can find it on YouTube, where he presents it. We're going on a bear hunt, and we showed this video to our students during the workshop as well.
Because it uses a lot of TPR, and there's a lot of, we're going through the woods, we're going through the bush, bush.
A lot of sound, and it's also showing to our students that sometimes you have to leave your own comfort zone to make the story motivating for the students. I mean, they would love if you exaggerate a little bit, I think.
Olivia.
Yeah, we know. Oh, we had a student using Olivia as well. So, yeah, Olivia wants to dance or something like that. So so we know many of the books you've mentioned here.
An easy reader version of The Magical Treehouse. Because I think it's a lovely idea to encourage children to read the little readers that you can get a hold of, but it is the rare child that will take them home, which is why we sort of think that promoting of stories, because every kid loves to hear stories, even if they don't like to read. So using stories, it's difficult to fit them in, because we realize that once you started the school year, you've got to get through the units, you've got to do all the activities and get through all of the vocab and get through all the grammar. But this reading a story every now and then is such a great way to motivate them, so that they are actually captured by the language and see it in action. Okay.
Okay. I think we're
going to move on, if that's okay. 5 Little Monkeys. I love that story. Okay. A second. Close the chat.
And of course, we have time to answer your questions. We'll come back to the book recommendations you had afterwards.
So I'm going to go on to the pre-activities, while activities, post-activities. Obviously, we don't want to patronize you and tell you things that you already know, but I think it's quite difficult to always remember to go through these stages when we are preparing to read a story to our class, because you're obviously inundated with all the other work that you have to do. But it is really important to remember that when we pick stories for our own children, for example, we know their tastes and we know what kinds of things that they like to read and like to hear. And we don't have pre-activities for activating their knowledge, but we might in some way sort of unconsciously do that with them. But with a class, and a language class is what we're going to be looking at or what we're thinking about, it's vital to go through these stages, because listening is a receptive skill. It's very passive. And it's entirely possible that you could read a story and a lot of it actually goes over your learners' heads. There could be this cognitive overload, and then your storytelling is going to be wasted. So if you can stage your storytelling, then they will learn, and they'll learn with a lot more enthusiasm and have fun in the process. We've had discussions actually here at the PH about gap fills, giving children gap fills as an activity. They're perfectly valid, but they're quite passive. They're not as motivating and they're not as contextual. That's something that they often have to do with Hörverständnis. So it's probably one of the activities that they don't particularly like. So if you have students who do badly on their listening tests, maybe it's because they're overwhelmed by gap fills and they don't really see the sense. So using natural differentiation is a good thing to think about with your learners. So we've given you some ideas for pre-activities. You could predict the story, just show them the cover of the book. You could pre-teach them some vocabulary. You could talk to them about whatever the main characters or the themes of the stories. While activities, repeating words, as Nadine was saying, get them to repeat the numbers in the caterpillar story, do body movements, tell you what's going to happen next. The post activities, they could do a role play and they reenact the story, or they can write a different ending, or they can draw something if the class is a little bit of a lower level and finds it difficult. Creativity, even if it's not difficult, every child loves to do these sort of creative things. So what we're going to do is have a look at a story. This story is actually a book that we have taken from a Young World booklet. It's actually not part of the bundle, your digital bundle that you get from Young World, but you can easily purchase it. It's called Young World Stories. And this particular story has been taken from Young World 1 stories. So I'm going to play it for you.
No orange juice. I open my eyes. It's my birthday. I'm so happy. My name is Cora. I'm 11 today. 11. Oh, I'm so happy. Cora! Cora, come down. Oh, it's Mummy. I'm coming, Mummy. What does Mummy want? Maybe she has my favorite breakfast. I like an egg and toast with lots of butter and orange juice. I see that there are only cornflakes on the table. And I say to Mummy, but it's my birthday. My special day. I'm 11. Mummy says, yes, I know. Happy birthday, Cora. I am sorry, I don't have any orange juice, and I don't have any milk, so we can't have tea. Look, here's a glass of water. I have to go shopping today. Cornflakes and no milk, and a glass of water? I don't like that. I really don't like that. Mummy says, it's time for school. Look, here are your sandwiches. Here's a banana and a packet of crisps. Please drink some water at school, because we don't have any orange juice. Bye-bye, Cora, Mummy says. She gives me a kiss. I take my school bag and go to school. I'm not happy now. It's nice at school. Everyone sings happy birthday to you. My teacher gives me a new pencil, a new rubber, and a pencil sharpener like the globe of the world. Helen, she's my best friend. Helen gives me a lovely birthday card and some chocolates. And for 11s, we drink milk and eat apples. In the afternoon, we play a card game because it's my birthday, and school finishes, and I go home. I open the door. Mummy and Daddy and my big brother Michael shout, happy birthday, Cora! Mummy says, shut your eyes, Cora. I shut my eyes, but Mummy says, no, Cora, shut your eyes tighter. I shut my eyes tight, and Mummy says, here is your birthday present. What is it? It's warm. I can feel its heart beating. I open my eyes. It's a dog. It's a puppy. Oh, it looks at me and I look at it. It's black and white and it has lovely black eyes. Mummy says, it's a she-dog. Her name is Kim. She's a terrier. Mummy says, no orange juice and no milk when Daddy and I go to buy a puppy. Now there's birthday cake for us all. But not for Kim. Birthday cake is not healthy for Kim. She can have a bone. You can give her a bone and then we can eat the cake. Oh, yes. This is my best birthday. I'm 11 and I've got a dog. My very own dog.
Okay, so you now listen to the story, and at this point, we'd welcome you once again to use the chat function, and we want you to think about a suitable pre-activity for this story, a while activity or a post-activity. So any ideas you've got, you can write into the chat. You can do it in German or English. Either language is totally fine. We're curious to see what kind of ideas you have. We give you about 2 to 3 minutes for that, or let's say 1 to 2 minutes.
Perfect. What do you do on your birthdays? I mean, it's such an easy theme, and most kids love having a birthday. So totally agree with that. It's a great way to activate their pre-knowledge.
And you're right, you're kind of flexible. I mean, we have the course books, and the course books are important, but we don't have to teach to the book, right? If you leave out one activity but do a little bit of storytelling, I think it's also acceptable.
Yeah. What do you eat on your birthday? So not everybody's going to have the same sort of birthday treats. There will be those who say, oh, cake and ice cream, but there'll be children from different cultures who might have different things that they like to eat on their birthday. What would be the best birthday present for you? Good.
And of course, if you have very young learners, you could ask the question in German and they would have to discuss it in, you would have to check the question, sorry, in English, but maybe they would discuss it in German, and then you give them some words or give them some scaffolding by writing down sentence starters or writing down most important vocabulary. I think we can support our learners there, of course.
Pre-activity, food for breakfast. Love that. I would bring in Marmite and make them taste something very British.
Or Vegemite in Australia.
Look at the pictures, yeah, and collect words matching to the pictures. Very good, yeah.
Exactly, of course. We come back to 5 sensational senses again, yeah. I'll show you also a book you could use there, but of course you can use it with this story as well.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even have to say anything. Just show them a picture. Perfect. Good. I like or don't like. Or likes and doesn't like.
We've got many very brilliant ideas here.
Give you another minute to think about what you could do as a post activity, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Good. You did that with Marmite. I would love to have been a fly on the wall.
Some people do like it, to be honest.
I love it.
I got it as a punishment when I was in Australia, though they thought maybe international people don't really like Vegemite or Marmite.
Good.
Okay.
So we are actually going to have a look at
Okay. Yeah, we're going to have a look at different suggestions for activities for the story Jasmin just told you. And I'll let you take the lead.
I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. So the birthday brainstorm, if the children don't have a lot of vocabulary, they could also mime it. And that involves this element of TPR again. So they blow out their candles, or they cut their cake, or they open up presents. So it also gives you this opportunity to pre-teach the vocabulary, birthday cake, candles, presents. You could ask them, do they like orange juice? And when would one drink it? In the book, they actually mention elevenses, so this would be a great opportunity for you to pre-teach this word elevenses and tie it in with the word that the children know, snoony, both obviously related to snacks at a certain time. Of course, the children don't actually, in Switzerland, don't eat their snoony at 9 o'clock. And in England, they don't actually eat their snack at 11. So it's approximately around that time. And you could model some sentences. You could pre-teach them vocabulary. Crisps is the word for pom chips in England, or what a globe is. And you could also do what one of you also said was predictions, picture predictions. So you could show a picture of a girl with an empty glass and ask them why she feels that way. And if the learners feel a little bit scared, it's always a good idea to allow this think, pair, share, where they can think about it by themselves and then pair up and talk about it and then share it with the class. While activity, I guess that the idea is to mimic these character emotions. And we've used this as well in our workshop, where you can actually take pictures of your children, the children in your class, get them to put on a particular face for an emotion, and then label that face. And it's so lovely for them because they really feel engaged with it. So you can get pictures of the members of your class showing their emotions. And then at relevant points in the story, you could ask the class, how does she feel? And then everybody looks at the picture and then they can say the word and mimic how that person shows that expression with their face and their body language. So it really helps to promote listening comprehension, and obviously promotes this element of TPR to reinforce the language of emotions. And then we have this post activities. So there are lots of ideas here. Story sequencing, using simple pictures and get them to put them in order and retell the story by themselves in their own words. A creative option would be to get them to color in their own puppy. What would their puppy look like? Cora's was small and black and white, and you could get them to draw their own puppy, or a little bit easier, draw their own birthday cake, and talk about why they like that particular birthday cake, what's great about it.
Yeah, I think we've got many different activities or suggestions here, and I think you all came up with brilliant ideas too. So maybe we can add them to our handout afterwards. But we mentioned the handout before, and here you see the list with book recommendations to tie in with all the different Young World books. So you have Young World 1, of course. Some of you mentioned Winnie the Witch before. And I put this on the list here as well, or Funny Bones I mentioned as well, with the 2 skeletons, where you can also repeat body parts. And there's also the song mentioned in Young World, or in even Young World 1, the Bones song. And this is also here inside Funny Bones. You also have like The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Froggy Gets Dressed. So many books you already mentioned in the chat are listed here as well. And I actually focused on Winnie the Witch too. And one of you, I think it was Roman or Remo, said it's very good to repeat colors and numbers. And this is actually something I totally support here, because I also used it with my students in primary school and they loved it, because Winnie is a witch and her house is black, she is black, her cat is black, and she always trips over her cat because she can't see him any longer. And then she decides to color the cat and she turns him green, but then she can't find him in the grass, and then she turns him another color. And this continues a couple of times, and afterwards she realizes, oh, it's not actually the color of the cat she has to change, but actually her house. And she turns her house from black into a very colorful house. So that's basically the story. And as someone mentioned before, you can repeat the housing or furniture or the rooms, colors, and so on. But this is I think it's clear that this is a book for young learners, but I want to actually emphasize the Let's Read and Find Out series. I just highlighted one of the books that's called The Five Senses, and you can use it with Young World 2 units. My five sensational senses here. It's a book that I think it's about mindfulness and being aware of all the different senses we've got and what can we do with them, and we should be appreciative about all these senses here. But the Let's Read and Find Out series actually covers various topics and that can be immediately linked to NMG. So also metamorphosis with the butterfly and the caterpillar, for example, and also other topics for older learners here. So, and yeah, I think we just go on to the next slide. Speaking of older learners, so you find a couple of books here. Here we are, this is by Oliver Jeffers. We heard about this before. And also, of course, we mentioned that you can use graded readers, level A1, A2, for the older learners or the very strong and experienced readers. And we also recommend to use graded readers because actually, as we said before, you can really choose the level which is suitable for your learners. And you as teachers, you know your learners really well. And to have like a couple of different graded readers in your classroom is definitely helpful. You can even have an STV if you still know these ones. You can even have them in English, by the way. So we ordered a couple for ourselves here, and saw that some of them are really useful as well. But we mentioned on the agenda that we're going to focus on pocket books and digital books as well, and this will be actually our last topic of today.
So I'm sure that most of you come across this concept of pocketbooks. They can be really useful in a lot of different subjects. And I remember very clearly both of my girls making pocketbooks to help them with different subjects. I think one of them came home with a little pocketbook with all the Roman numerals in it. So you can see from our slide that we've given a sample task from Young World. It's from the Young World activity book. So there are quite a few advantages to using pocketbooks. So they're very small and portable. Because they're so small, they can focus on very simple, concise language. So your learners are not going to get overwhelmed. And they're perfect to allow for differentiation. So learners who are a little bit of a lower level will use simpler text, and the more advanced learners can be encouraged to use a little bit more complex text, fuller sentences rather than words. The books can contain a repetition of the words and phrases that you want them to learn. And basically, this continual exposure to the words and phrases in a particular context will help to support them retaining these things in their memory, to internalize the language. And they're visual, so they're very easy to personalize. And it's, I think all children love drawing things and love the idea of owning their own language. So this is a way, exactly as Lehrplan 21 wants us to do, where children don't feel that they're learning for us, they're learning for themselves. And this pocketbook gives them that ownership of the language. It naturally helps to improve their fluency and their pronunciation because they're repeatedly using it. And it just boosts their confidence and encourages them to read a little bit more autonomously. Okay, so digital storytelling is, in these days of technology, a very common thing. And we should be encouraging all of the young learners to use the resources that are available to them. So digital storytelling is really empowering because it takes them from being these passive children who are listening to us telling them stories to going to being the active storyteller. So they get a chance to own the language, and it gives them this sense of pride and accomplishment. Your learners will have to think critically remember we were talking about critical thinking. So they'll have to think critically about what kind of language they want to use, the structures that they want to use. They'll have to plan and write, and then also narrate their story. So it's a really good way of encouraging them to produce language. And there's this very natural integration. I mean, it's what stories do, but with digital storytelling, you've got the visuals, you've got the text, you've got the audio. So it caters to this very diverse learning styles. And it's very engaging and stimulating. And because they don't have to read the story out loud to their class, they're not being put on the spot. It sort of gives them the opportunity to go away and practice, record themselves, re-record themselves. So it's really good for the shy, less confident students. It gives them the opportunity to do their pronunciation practice, think about intonation, think about speed. They can listen to their own recording, and then they also have a chance to self-assess. So it gives them a lot more autonomy. So here we actually have, I had this idea that since we talked about pocketbooks before, that we would use a pocketbook as a digital story. It gives this blended approach to language learning. So you've got this pocketbook, which is a physical resource, and then you've got the digital storytelling, which builds their digital literacy, which is Lehrplan 21 asks us to encourage digital literacy. So in this example, a pocketbook that has been written and drawn by Nadine's little girl, Myla, has actually been digitalized using a very popular teachers learning tool from bookcreator.com. There are lots of options available on the internet for creating digital storybooks, and each of them has different positives and negatives. Some of them have wonderful sound effects and pictures that you can use and so on. So it's worth you doing some research to find out what's out there. And this has been done, as I said, by Myla. She's in 3rd grade. She might be a little bit ahead of her classmates in terms of her language. But I think it's a very sweet example of the possibilities that your students can have.
And by the way, you mentioned that they can re-record themselves if they want to. That's what she did. And I wasn't allowed in her bedroom, by the way. She told me to get out, and she wanted to do it on her own. And this is really a good opportunity for the shyer kids, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll show you this example.
This is my book, Mika's Birthday in the Tea Park. First, we all go to see the links. Then we have a guided tour with the ranger. Suddenly, it starts raining. So we have to find shelter in the indoor playground. Finally, Mika gets his presents. This is the end.
All right.
So, and I just have to say, Myla loved doing it, and she loved drawing. She loves writing. So, and as Jasmin mentioned before, natural differentiation is really possible here. And as soon as they can use visuals and digital sounds and can re-record themselves, it makes it so much more motivating, I find. Definitely. So, yeah, I would say this was actually our very last slide. So you can see some of the books we've mentioned before, or we explained to you in one of our previous slides. And we'll send a handout to you, as we mentioned a couple of times before. But if you do have any questions, we'll go back to the chat, and we have time now to answer all your questions. Okay, good point about the mini book .ch.
You make a pocketbook with my family.
Very good idea. Oh, exactly. That's good if they can use it if a younger class or a lower grade can use it again.
It's actually a really lovely idea because
Yeah.
the learners become teachers, and those who are viewing it are encouraged by the fact that there are other learners using the language. It becomes a lot more personal.
Yeah, it's also nice to know that the classes work together, right? It's not just the individual class you have, but there's like the collaboration.
Oh, I'm really pleased. Well, I hope that we've given you some ideas to take into your classrooms. Does somebody know epic books? I have not heard of them.
Me neither. That would be interesting to Google. Okay. Okay.
Platform.
Yeah, there's some free online platforms that have appeared from the market, but some are still active. We've got some links on our page. We usually gave to our students. So.
It's quite difficult to get around the publishing
Definitely.
problems.
It's
with
become more difficult.
Yeah.
After COVID, especially, I find.
Suitable graphic novels. I can actually put some in my. It depends on what their learning level is, but my elder daughter was a massive bookworm, loved books. Never had a problem taking her away from them. But my second daughter was not a big fan, and the only way I could get her to read was by buying her graphic novels. So I have quite a few ideas for graphic novels that I can put on our book list. I'll be very happy to do that. I figure that it doesn't matter what children read as long as they read. It doesn't matter if it's 100 pages long or 1 page long, or if it has pictures or not.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's like a book for any preference, actually, and for any level and for any grade.